Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Manny, I'm going to get your input right away. Since this is our weeb show, should it be konbanwa and konnichiwa?
Well, sure.
Anyway, welcome to Anime Octane. This is our brand new show, our brand new live stream that's going out here on YouTube, on Facebook Live, and on Twitch. That is all about anime. We'll be talking about current shows. We'll be talking about classic shows. We'll be looking at all sorts of things happening within the world of anime over the course of every other Monday. This will alternate with our other new live show, No Nerd Caliber, where we have whoever's on the team that time. We'll be talking about things that are, you know, significant to them. We're still trying to narrow down for the upcoming one, which will be on the 26th, what Star Wars topic we're going to be talking about, because it'll be in advance of May the 4th, and there's just so many. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but what we're talking about tonight is are two really problematic anime. So before we even get into introductions or anything about that, content warning. We're going to be talking about, let's try to say this without the P word, age inappropriate relationships, legal and otherwise inappropriate, physical abuse, stalking, emotional abuse, I guess. These are troublesome, problematic anime that are currently airing right now on Crunchyroll. So, now that content warning is out there. I will probably, if I can remember, I'll hit the content warning every time we come up to something like that. So be warned, folks. I will flashcord photo. Welcome to the chat there on the Twitches. Anime, yeah, waifus and warlocks. I'd play that game. Isn't that Genshin Impact anyway? Anyway, so I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber, first-person shooter as a cosplay photographer on Facebook, Burley_adopter, as a bunch of other things on Twitter and a few other places. Joining me tonight is my partner and the founder of this whole shindig, Manny. Introduce yourself.
Hello, this is Manny. I'm the founder of Nerdcaliber. Very happy to be part of the first episode of Anime Octane, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we do. Also on YouTube, Minishay, welcome to the show. Oop. If that was an oop because we're going to be talking about troublesome things, yes, that is, it's an oopie. MEM Chew YT. Sup homies. Sup homie. And hopefully you also heard the content warning. Age inappropriate relationships, physical abuse, stalking, etc. So these two shows they started airing on Crunchyroll in the spring season. They are Koikimo and Higehiro. Give you a brief description of what these shows are about. So they're both romantic comedies, allegedly. That's how they're tagged in Crunchyroll and My Anime List and everywhere else. And they're both based on light novel series. Koikimo is the story of a ridiculously good-looking, well-to-do, indeterminate age, but he looks like in his 20s, Japanese salaryman named Ryo, who gets saved from a bad tumble down a set of stairs by a random high school girl, who he then discovers when he gets back to his house, which he shares with his family still, is one of the best friends of his younger sister. So this gentleman, Ryo, offers himself. I've read in a number of things where it says he offers to kiss her as a reward for falling down the stairs. That is not what the translation I read said in the anime. He offers his body to her as a reward for saving him from falling down the stairs. She is 100% blunt, telling him he's absolutely a creep, no thanks. And those two things makes him fall head over heels in love with her. A high school girl, his sister's best friend. He proceeds to shower her with gifts of like roses and other flowers. which she insistently says to not do, and he never stops. He proceeds to follow, becomes obsessed with her and starts following her. He becomes a stalker. Content warning, stalking. Red Bunny, welcome to the show. And ultimately winds up sitting down with her at a restaurant where she was with his sister for a while before the sister bailed, and trying to have a conversation with her. Ichika is the girl. Ichika gets up, walks out. Before she walks out, a former lover of Ryo walks in. He doesn't remember her name even. And then starts giving Ichika and him crap about the fact that it looks like he's dating a high school girl. So Ichika pieces out, and Ryo grabs a napkin. We're going to fade this one here. Grabs a napkin off the table, smashes it into the woman's face, smears her makeup, and then when she freaks out and says, you've smeared my makeup, you've even dislodged my false eyelashes, he says, I will rip off your real eyelashes if you bother her again. So, yeah.
Sounds like a sane person.
Sane, wonderful saint of a man. What a catch. Ladies, he's out there stalking high school girls. Anyway, that's the first episode of Koikimo. I didn't watch anything else. I won't watch anything else on this show. I did read up finally found some forums that had hidden spoilers that you can unspoil about where the show goes, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Higehiro. Oh, by the way, Koikimo is a portmanteau of the actual term, the name of the show in Japanese, which is much longer. It's a light novel. Of course it's long. What that translates into English is, this is too sick to be called love. They know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing with this show. Higehiro is a surprisingly different take that swaps the creepiness factor of the characters with the creepiness factor of the show. Higehiro Yoshida is, again, he's a salaryman. In this case, he's some sort of team lead on a bunch of programmers. He is, besotted with a superior in his company. I don't know for sure in what little I've seen of the show whether or not she's a direct report. But a slightly older woman. He finally gets a chance to take her out on a date. He confesses. She rejects him nicely, but very bluntly. He goes out with a buddy of his from work again, and to drink away his sorrows, gets so drunk that the bartender shuts him off. It's after all the trains have shut down, so he walks back to his place completely drunk, and sitting on the ground in front of a wall, either in front of or very near his apartment building, is a high school girl, or at least a girl that's wearing high school clothing. He tries to find out what her problem is. She has no place to stay. The trains are gone. And he says, all right, look, you can stay at my place for the night. And she immediately says, oh, thanks, and offers to have sex with him. Now, drunk as he is, so drunk that he doesn't remember all the details of the conversations the next morning, he turns her down. Takes her back to the apartment. She continues to try to seduce him, essentially. He continues to, while, again, so drunk he can barely talk, turn her down. And ultimately, he winds up, telling her the next day when they're sort of really talking about this stuff, you can stay here for a while, until you're comfortable with going back. She's from Hokkaido, and they're in Tokyo. So I don't know exactly what the distance is there. I'm thinking it's like Seattle to San Francisco. And she's been doing this for 6 months. And he says, you can stay here, but if you ever, throw yourself at me like that again, you're out on the street. And so it seems to be set up, Papo Nerd, welcome to the show. It seems to be set up in a completely different idea that our lead is the opposite. He's a good guy. He is the good guy in this story. He says, I'm not attracted to little girls. Don't even bother with all that. Except the story, while they're making this statement and he's making these, supposedly grand gestures, is directed and framed as the most blatant, ecchi stuff you've seen. Panty shots, cleavage shots, down, just all through the first episode. So it's clearly trying to set it up as being a rom-com that's, a nice guy, and it's really not that creepy, except even in the late, I watched this one up until the current episode, the third episode, and I'll explain why. But in the third episode, she literally says, there's, a huge downside to this. You could get arrested. And they're trying to make it like that's okay because he's a nice guy. And, oh, by the way, here's all these panty shots and cleavage shots that you guys want. Here's your fan service. In this case, you're getting ecchi fan service in the service of an alleged romantic comedy about a completely age inappropriate relationship. So that's Higehiro. That portmanteau, by the way, translates to I got dumped, so I shaved and took in a high school runaway. Which is actually pretty accurate.
These titles.
Light novel titles, please. So I'm going to talk at first about Higehiro because it is, frankly, the less offensive of the two. And that's the one where I actually use the screen grab from the show, which I didn't actually create as a document. That was stupid of me. Anyway, where it shows the student ID. That's the thumbnail for the YouTube show and the Facebook Live thing. And that's, at one point he tries to find out, something about her. So he asks about her student ID and she shows it. And it's, she's a high school student or of high school age. She's no longer in high school, clearly. She's been, sleeping her way from Hokkaido to Tokyo. So they make it very clear throughout the course of the 3 episodes that I've seen so far that this will be ultimately a romantic relationship between the two of them. There's no doubt. I don't know, 'cause I had a hard time finding advanced information about the light novels anywhere for Higehiro. Not so much for Koikimo. That was easy. So I don't know whether or not they have him wait until she's 18, in which case that makes him just a groomer. But I watched the second episode to see whether or not it maintained this sense of, good guy, but we're going to use that excuse to show you all the panty shots you could ever possibly want. And it didn't. The second episode had almost none of that, ecchi pantsu stuff. So I said, all right, well, maybe they are going to try to make this something. Maybe he's actually going to kick her out or something like that. Third episode is worse than the first.
Okay.
So they're having a discussion. She once again tries to, apparently she cannot conceive of the idea of somebody being nice to her without them expecting something from her. So she strips down to her bra and panties and basically tries to seduce him again. The camera framing has nothing to do with the two of them having a discussion when it is literally just a square block of her butt or her side boob, or and that's all through this discussion that they're having. They're not framing two people just having a discussion. They are having the discussion as an excuse to show a high school girl in her underwear. And it's just, Now, Manny and I may have different views on the value or the usefulness or interest of ecchi in anime of any kind. I don't mind it. I just go far past that and say I'm fine with ecchi. It's fun, it's sexy, it's great if it's appropriate. So if you are showing ecchi of two people of an appropriate age, like most high school rom-coms or even ecchi rom-coms, it's high school people with high school people. Like, okay, there's nothing particularly inappropriate about that relationship that's being displayed on the screen. other than the fact that it's stupid because they always use really stupid excuses for people to fall into these ecchi situations. Um, but in this case, they're not. They're using a relationship between an adult man and a high school age girl to display ecchi to us. And that's just, I think that's a pretty terrible thing to do. Um,
I agree with you. I mean, I'm not against, you know, uh, uh, sexualness, sexiness in the anime, as long as the adults involved, and of course they have to be adults, are consensual. That's why it it has to like um, as an example, Seven Deadly Sins. The reason why I stopped watching is because the main character keeps being a perv, and it just keeps throwing me off, and I'm like, all right, I can't watch this anymore. The Shame's a good story, but I just can't get into it for that reason. Um, for I'm gonna shorten it and call it I Shaved. For I Shaved, um, I it's definitely better of the two. And you're right. The biggest culprit, in my opinion, is the directing. Is the way the shots are directed, and it's I wasn't sure where it was going to go, and I'm glad you told me because I had no interest in watching this, continue watching the series, um, now even more so. But it was like him saying no to an underage girl. That's fine. I'm okay with that. That's great storytelling. But the fact that they kept like zooming in on her cleavage and up her legs, and it's like it's almost like saying like, yeah, he's saying no, but you viewers, you would say yes, right? That's what I kept feeling like. Psychologically, that's what I kept feeling
yep.
from watching it. It was like, and kind of makes you like almost like you want to slap the main character. Like, what are you doing? If I were in your place, and then it just, oh no,
It's not like he doesn't have adult female friends where he could say, "Hey, I've got this. I've found this poor girl who's in a really tough situation. Can you look after her for a while until she gets on her feet?" Um, so a couple of more people in the chats. Davey Nunez, welcome to the show. The Otaku Chicago. This is a great point, and I want to get into this. Says, do people forget values are different in other countries? Um, no, I don't, and I think that's a good point. Um, so before we get into that, I'm going to describe Koikimo, the other one, because it's worse. Oh, I did describe Koikimo already, didn't I? Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so Otaku Chicago. I understand that Japanese societal values and norms are different, and I did an article about these two on our website, and I get into that a little bit. So I'll just do the short version. Um, Japanese society has a much stronger break between what people feel or do and how they act. Um, if you do something illegal, that's a problem in Japan. If you think of something illegal, that's not a problem in Japan. That's one of the reasons why you actually have commercial doujinshi markets where people can sell some of the most transgressive content. Hentai with the R word all through it, and things like that, commercially, and it's accepted. It's because Japanese society, doing the appropriate thing is such a core principle in Japanese society that they believe, and this may actually be the case, that you can have that break, that people can think horribly transgressive things and enjoy horribly transgressive media and not actually act on it. So I understand that. I get that. And Otaku Chicago, I should also mention the values have changed a lot in the last 20 years here in the US. And yes, they have, going in what I think is the much more appropriate direction of this sort of content not being appropriate. The other thing about Japan, and how its value structures are different, eludes me. I had 2 points about that. And one was the legal system, and how it differs from how people. I'll come back to it. Um, so, and again, Otaku Chicago. One example I have is the age of consent was raised in 2001 in Hawaii from 13 to 18. Um, it is still in some states here in the U.S. 16 and under, but that's in every state where it's lower than that. It's with parental permission for a relationship in marriage. So, you know, in no state in the United States would what they're doing here in these two shows be appropriate or legal for that matter. Um, but my point is, Otaku Chicago, these shows aren't being presented to people in Japan right now, or only to people in Japan right now. They are on the American platform Crunchyroll, which was created by an American company to provide anime and manga to American audiences. And these shows do not fly in American values. The idea that you can have horribly transgressive ideas like age inappropriate relationships and not act on them just doesn't fly in the United States. Whether that's accurate or not, that's a completely different debate. But that's the way American values are. And Crunchyroll is putting this up there and making money off subscriptions with these things as though it's no problem whatsoever. So I get that there are different values. This is not Japan, and Crunchyroll is not a Japanese company, even if it is now owned by Sony, which bought it. So I don't think that that's a valid excuse for Crunchyroll to be showing this content by saying that it's different in Japan. Crunchyroll would not show hentai, but hentai is shown in broadcast late night, obviously, but broadcast on Japan or in Japan. So in that case, Crunchyroll already knows that there's a difference between what can be shown in one country and in another. And it's fine with that. Why is it fine with that? Because it's sex. Like it's blatant sex. And here in the United States, you can't show that. Apparently here in the United States, according to Crunchyroll, you can show the P relationship between adults and not adults. Boy, is that a tough way of getting around trying to not say that word.
I 100% agree with you, Rodney. It's one thing what they show in Japan. They show in Japan. You know, I have no authority to judge a culture and everything like that. But when something is brought over to America into our homes and everything, it's shows like these are really problematic. I feel like sometimes our country doesn't take abuse very seriously. You know, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, spiritual abuse.
Cough, cough, NFL.
It's like, and we're still fighting a society to educate people, let them know that some of the things that we consider normal is actually very damaging to ourselves. And the fact that these new shows are being broadcasted here through Crunchyroll, to me is very upsetting.
So, abuse. Yeah. So I made this point in the article. I really did not like the scene in which Ryo physically abuses the former lover. But I didn't like it because it's awful, and it portrays him as an awful person, and the writer of the light novel and the makers of this anime think that that's something that's worth mining for comedy. I have friends, female friends, who would have a panic attack watching something like that because they've had physical abusers who've done things like that. To be able to say that it's okay to show that as a comedy, as a source for comedy. That reminded me what my other thing about Japan was. As a source for comedy is I'm sorry, it's just wrong. It's wrong in Japan, and it's certainly wrong here. My other point, Otaku Chicago, about one of the differences is, yes, I understand. So I'm going to spoil further down the road for Koikimo for you. I did read the spoilers, and if you don't want to hear that, sorry, don't care. It's, and for me to say that I don't care about giving out spoilers is a lot. Um, Further on in the light novel series, Ryo apparently realizes that he's been a piece of garbage, that his way of doing things is horrible, but he only realizes it after Ichika has fallen for him and confesses to him, and he has to tell her no. So he gets a redemption. And the Japanese love redemption arcs. I get it. They love redemption stories. There is apparently nothing too transgressive for the Japanese to not have somebody come to a better place in their life. Having the comedy based on the fact that he spends a significant amount of the light novel series, and probably therefore the anime, as a abusive piece of garbage. He doesn't deserve a redemption arc. That, or if he does, his redemption arc really should start in prison. It just, I get it. I get it, Japan. You love your bakugos and your, whatever. It's like, doesn't matter how horrible they are. They can be a better, except he never becomes a better person. But anyway, this isn't somebody to give that redemption arc to. I'm sorry. And it's certainly not a story to mine for comedy and then ultimately turn into a romantic comedy. That shouldn't happen.
To me, the worst part about this anime is I mean, yeah, the guy is despicable, but what really like got me the most upset about the first episode was that Arima Ichika,
Ichika,
um,
the girl, yeah.
Ichika, like when that scene at the end where I guess his ex or a former fling comes by and tells her how much he's a horrible person. She leaves and she says, I watched the sub. She says he's not so bad, and I was like, come on, are you? Oh,
They're
I'm
setting
just
they're setting it up exactly that she is going to ultimately wind up falling for him. If you heard that, folks, my apologies. That was Microsoft telling me stuff I didn't need to know. Microsoft alerts, Windows 10, you suck. Anyway, yeah, it's within the first episode they make it abundantly clear that this is going to be a romantic comedy in which the female who should be staying away from this guy, light years away from this guy, is going to fall in love with him. There's no question about that. That's just a given. And as I said, spoiling it, further forward, she does. She falls for him. Why? I have no clue whatsoever. But so one of the things I was going to sort of compare and contrast this with was the big controversial anime from last year, Interspecies Reviewers. So it was running on Funimation. After episode, I can't remember, it was 4 or 6 or something, Funimation pulled it. Mainly because the audio of the implied sex scenes was so graphically accurate that it just freaked everybody out. Well, everybody at Funimation anyway. And they just said, yeah, it's just too adult for us. We didn't realize it was going to be this adult, blah, blah, blah. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why that may actually have been true. But anyway, the show was, the gist of the show was, it's a fantasy show where, a guy, a human, an elf, and an angel wind up going around from brothels for other fantasy species where, and then they write up ratings of them. And that's how they make some money, in addition to being adventurers and going out on adventures. And the show is incredibly sex positive, sex worker positive, age positive. One of the great characters is a human sex worker who has to be in her 70s. It is, I guess, species neutral positive. I mean, you can't say racially open because they're different species, not racist, but you know, um, no bigotry of any kind whatsoever. Um, it is non-binary positive. The angel is presented as is often depicted in even ancient text as hermaphroditic. Um, it's also transpositive. One of the places they go to, they actually change gender. That's the big draw for this particular brothel. It is such an amazingly positive statement kind of show that it's an absolute shame that the United States general values completely made it so that it couldn't be shown here. And not because of something that was shown, because of the sound. And I admit, it was kind of straight out of a porno. I mean, there was, there was no subtlety there whatsoever. Um, not so Taco Chicago. I want to come back a message here to make sure I get your point here. I agree, but you have to also remember that some of these risque situations in anime are also depicted in American cartoons. While not as widely noticed, we are viewing this culture from the outside in, so the most obscene is the most visible. Well, yeah, maybe to some extent. I'm a big anime fan. I watch a ton of anime. I see all kinds of what is visible, and honestly, the fact that they're making a live action Gundam series got way more traction in my general nerddom, Twitter and Facebook and whatever social media than these shows did, as obscene as parts of them are. So I'm not sure that I agree with that. That the obscene is the most visible. It may be the most controversial, and therefore, in some cases, the most talked about. But even then, I don't think more people are going to be talking about Gunpla, and the fact that Macross and Robotech have finally settled their lawsuits, than I ever see talk about this sort of stuff. But your point is taken. So I don't know why Crunchyroll is doing this. I don't know why they haven't taken this off the air. I do know that both of these shows are just stupidly popular. They have, ridiculously high ratings for what I would consider in my anime list. I get that there are people who are not going to be, upset about this as I clearly think they should be. And obviously Crunchyroll and Crunchyroll executives are in that camp. They don't care. They clearly don't care that, these two animes are portraying relationships that would get the two adult males thrown in prison for. I would like to see them do a more morally correct thing than what Funimation did with interspecies reviewers. I would like to see this kind of stuff disappear, not that stuff. But that's just me.
Yeah, but my main issue with both of them is just consent and age difference. That's really the two I just can't get over. The rest of it, animation's nice. Directing of one of them is better than the other, definitely, in my opinion.
Yep.
Which we just talked about. But it's just those things. It's just why, just like, no, why this doesn't give me anything of value, honestly. Like, in any way. Like, so if I'm not gaining some sort of a good moral or lesson or anything out of it, it's just a waste of time.
I agree. Otaku Chicago, as far as the interspecies reviewers, it's not the American values that deny the show from being praised. It's the same cultural shift in the U.S. that supports these values and condemns them in media. I think you're talking, apples and apples. I think that's essentially the same thing. So one of the things about these two shows, I dug into them a little bit for the article, and this really kind of surprises me. The studio behind Higehiro there's absolutely no question about the fact that they would produce something like this. Their previous animes are Recently My Sister is Unusual, which is really bad. Um, this last year they did the series Super HX Eros or Heroes X or whatever it's pronounced. Superpowered teens that fight off alien invaders using the power of horniness and nudity. Not joking. That's it. That's the business. And they did a few years ago. The Ryu's work is never done. It's about a teenage shogi grandmaster, the grandmaster in Japan, who finds himself taking on a series of young girl students, all of whom it becomes a harem. All of whom want to be his wife, and the harem is made up entirely of grade schoolers. So yeah, so that's the studio that made Higehiro. It's not a surprise that it's just literally panty shot after panty shot. Yeah. The studio Nomad made Koikimo, and Nomad made Camphor, which was a very etchy show, but at its premise was the idea that a guy has his body swapped for a woman's body. And it touches on some of the issues about that, about gender identity and so on, which is, I mean, it makes it not just, guy gets to walk into a girl's, locker room because he now looks like a girl. It's a lot about gender identity, and it's a deeper show than you would expect. And they made, it's just like real lightweight moe comedy called Chronicles of the Going Home Club. It's like K-On! Without the music, and even more chill. And how they wound up making Koikimo, I have no idea. Um, Otaku Chicago, is it bad that I thought those were hilarious? The shows that I were working on, Super HX Heroes, I didn't find it. There was an occasional funny moment, but I don't think I made it past the third episode because it was just too stupid. Um, Recently My Sister is Unusual was funny for the ghost that possessed her. But what the ghost made her do was way beyond the pale. Um, and yeah. I got through four, I think, episodes of The Rose Work Is Never Done because I kept thinking they're really not going to turn this into a harem with grade school girls. I mean, they're just not. And then they did, and I went, and yeah, his friend, obviously, who's in love with him, um, who's a tough as nails, all female shogi player. She's hilarious every time she shows up because she recognizes just how freaking wrong it is what he's doing, and basically comes close to beating the crap out of him every time she shows up. Um, Other than that, I can't accept the humor in those shows when it's a harem about grade school girls. Yeah. Ah, how could you? Anyway. Um. So basically, Crunchyroll really needs to get these off the air. I don't think they're going to. No, I mean, come on. This is our first show. Nobody's watching this. Well, that's not true. You guys are watching it. Thank you very much for your comments and so on, and thank you for a reasoned discourse, Otaku Chicago. I was expecting an awful lot of flaming going on, and that's not the case, and I appreciate that a lot. Um,
Wait a few days. We'll see. We'll check our
well,
comments
yeah, we'll
section.
check. The the comments later on. The comments will not be good. Um, but I really wish Crunchyroll would pull this or pull these two
Yeah.
shows, particularly Koikimo. You know, Higehiro is just kind of inappropriate, sure, but just stupid etchy.
Yeah. I would like to share that for those that are thinking that maybe we're making a big thing out of nothing or that maybe we're blowing this out of proportion. Um, the only thing I can say is that I remember when I was younger, I used to like a lot of very dumb things or things that if I watch now would be very to me be very cringy. But at the time, you know, I just had a different mindset. I was young. Um, I was getting education from sources that are now are problematic. That I see that now is problematic. I didn't have the best male role models, you could say, growing up also. Um, and it's really the question is I want to give you. It's like, what exactly are you getting out of this? I mean, if you're watching this and you're laughing, but it's not bothering you, I can't teach empathy. Um, but I would implore that maybe think about it. Like this is wrong, and and if it doesn't really bother that much, I don't know what to say, but I don't know. I maybe talk to more people. I don't know.
So, particularly Koikimo, where at least for the first arcs of this anime and the light novels, the main character is a physically abusive, obsessed stalker with consent violation issues. Aside from whether or not he's in an age inappropriate relationship, which he is or is trying to be, go to your phone and go to Google and type in "women killed because they said" and see what the next word is. It's no. It's a common enough thing that it autofills in Google. Um, how you can have a character start off that horrifyingly bad and eventually give him a redemption arc, but I mean, you know, yeah. Um, please understand that there are women in your life, whether they're telling you this or not, who would have panic attacks triggered by watching this behavior.
Yeah.
And please understand that's why this behavior presented as a source to mine for comedy is wrong.
I think of like John Hughes movies in the 80s. I remember watching some of them, and when I watched them for the first time, I would laugh, and then I start thinking about what's being presented there, and you realize, oh my gosh, this is actually really horrible. Um, and I think for me, it's just when I realize how many of my own friends, my own family members have suffered abuse of some type, and realize that it's just an ongoing problem. It just maybe it's age also. Maybe I'm seeing now that I'm more wiser. I'm seeing things like, okay, this stuff is just not for me.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm sitting here, like a couple of days into 61, looking back and going, yeah, this is just wrong. And I understand that the vast majority of the audience that's watching this are not my age, and they feel that I think they feel that means that their interpretation of what is right or wrong about this is going to be different than mine. And I am generally not a moral absolutist. I understand values differ in different places. Um, but I am a moral, what would be the right word? There are lines that, shouldn't be crossed no matter what your culture believes. And in general, the idea of age appropriate or inappropriate relationships is a line that probably shouldn't be crossed to mine for comedy and romance. Specifically, physical abuse, stalking, obsession, consent violation should never be mined for comedy. And that's Koikimo. Like I said, that's clearly the worst of the two. I think I'm tapped out.
Same here. I can't wait to go to an anime convention, and like these type of problems always pop up a lot when we go cover things. We hear stories,
Yep.
and I can't wait for the day when that stops.
Oh, please, please, that would be wonderful. So, folks, thank you for joining us on our inaugural Anime Octane show. Again, thank you for the wonderful discussions. Otaku Chicago, I love the discussion. He says, or they say, we do too. Bang up job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know what our topic is going to be next week. It might be sort of a look. We're toying around with the idea of the wide gap in quality between spring season shows this year. there's some real garbage tier stuff in addition to these two. There are other shows that are just straight up bad, not wrong and bad. But then there's stuff that's absolutely stellar.
Mm.
So that may be our topic for discussion, which would be May 3rd.
All right. I would like to invite anyone watching this, if they have an idea you would like us to do, something like a new show you want us to talk about, let us know in the comments below, and depending how our time is and if it's a good idea, we'll definitely consider it.
Absolutely. I mean, we're just throwing ideas out there left and right here, but that doesn't mean we have thought of everything. And a lot of times somebody will come in from left field with a, hey, why don't you talk about this? It's like, good idea. Otaku Chicago, please also know I am playing devil's advocate on my defense of the situations depicted in these anime, and I get that and appreciate that. Having somebody play rational devil's advocate is way better than having to deal with a lot of intense hate. So thank you. Anyway, again, so thank you very much. Rodney Brown.
This is Manny with No Caliber.
And we're signing off. We'll see you. So tomorrow night is our Nerd Week live show. All sorts of really cool. I can't contain myself. I got to drop. If you're an anime fan, you're probably an Asianophile. That's not a word, but whatever. The trailer for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings dropped. Oh my god! As a comic book nerd, and an anime nerd, and a former martial arts student, and whatever. Oh, I can't tell you how excited we are. That's obviously going to be on the topic tomorrow night, but a whole bunch of other things already. Thursday, we're looking at what we're going to be doing for our full fat spoiler chat. Somehow I got screwed up and thought Mortal Kombat was going to drop before Thursday, and in fact, it's going to be Friday. So we're taking Mortal Kombat off the list, and we will come up with another topic for full fat spoiler chat for upcoming Thursday. Thursday at 8 o'clock. All our shows are at 8 o'clock. So hopefully we'll see you at some of those. Whatever the full fat spoiler chat is, when you see the event come up, know that it's going to be spoiled. We're going to talk about every single aspect of the show or movie or whatever it is that we wind up talking about. So that's why it's called spoiler chat. But again, thank you very much for joining us. We will see you in some other show or in 2 weeks for the next Anime Octane.